agents and the work they're doing to accomplish this mission. And as believers, you and I need to understand we're engaged in skirmishes, we're engaged in battles, and sometimes in outright war. We need to understand that behind every war, every battle, every skirmish lies a strategist, someone who is the ultimate mastermind. We know him from Scripture as Satan. He is defined as our enemy. He is the opposition, and he has one mission, and that mission is to take every Christian out. As a master strategist, he implements many things designed to attack any or every part of our lives. These strategies that he uses are designed to interrupt our plans, our goals, to achieve his ultimate purpose, to destroy our testimony. That means he uses any and every trick in the book to do this. Nothing is off limits. He will use everything and anything he can to win the battle. He's a master of deception, of tricks and changes and schemes. He doesn't play fair by any rules except his own to achieve whatever he wants. He's been successful in what he's been doing for many centuries. He understands human beings better than we understand ourselves. He watches us, observes our behavior, looks for any areas of weakness that he can exploit. Then he devises schemes to get us to fall into sin. He uses, as I call it, secret agents within the church to accomplish these goals from within. Today, we're going to look at what Jude has to say about these agents and the work of their master. And the characteristics are exposed in these two verses. Now remember, these secret agents or terrorists, they remain hidden. They don't walk around with a sign that says, "Beware of me, I'm a terrorist, I'm out to destroy you." They don't come in and exploit and say, "This is what I am, this is what I'm going to do." They remain hidden. They look like you, they dress like us, they talk like us, they act like us. They're no different. And they're very hard to be able to pick. They're subtle in their attacks, but they're always looking for opportunities to undermine any work that opposes their agendas, and also to remove anyone who stands in their way in accomplishing it. They are meticulous, they're patient in accomplishing their assigned task, they're excellent strategists, and what Jude says, be vigilant, be aware of the schemes before it's too late. Now, as we break it up in this first part, he has some wonderful things to say about their actions. And the first thing is the hidden reefs or unseen dangers. These people are blemishes at your love feast, eating with you without the slightest qualm, shepherds who feed only themselves. Now, what he's saying is, these same people, in verses 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way through, have infiltrated all aspects of church life. And that means from an administrative point of view to a social point of view. They're influencing others. Nothing is off limits to them and what they do. Now, you might be saying, "Well, Pastor, I want to know, what's this love feast they're talking about?" Well, these were called the agape, or love feast, that the early church implemented to promote brotherly love and to refresh the saints who were poor and struggling. It was really a time of fellowship that started and ended with singing and prayer. That's what they were set up to do. It provided the early church with opportunities for all the church members, whether you were rich or poor, no matter what your social status was, to come together over a meal. Everybody brought a plate to share with others. And so your social status didn't matter. You came together as believers, and you shared a meal together. That meant the fatherless, the widows, the strangers, everyone was invited to these feasts. And their eating together was their proof to love one another. That's why it's a reference to love feast. They showed their love towards one another through these feasts. Now, originally, these love feasts were celebrated before the Lord's Supper, but over time, they were celebrated after it. But they never, ever took the place of the Lord's Supper, something that we just had. It was either before or it was after. And so it got to the trend where it became after the Lord's Supper that they met together and had this time of fellowship together. The Apostle Paul reveals how these love feasts didn't take long to become corrupted, how it didn't take long for them to lose their original intention. I don't think I put it up. No, I didn't. It's in 1 Corinthians 11, 17 through 22, and it says this: "In the things I tell you now I do not praise you, because when you come together you do more harm than good. First I hear that when you meet together as a church you're divided, and I believe some of this. It is necessary to have differences among you so that it may be clear which of you really has God's approval. When you come together, you're not really eating at the Lord's Supper. This is because when you eat, each person eats without waiting for the others. Some people do not get enough to eat, while others have too much to drink. You can eat and drink in your own houses. You seem to think God's church is not important, and you embarrass those who are poor. What should I tell you? Should I praise you? I do not praise you for doing this thing." So what we have is something that originally started out with a great intention. It honoured the Lord and his people. And over time, it became tainted and corrupted in practice. It became marked by drunkenness. People became gluttonous and devoured the food so quickly there was never enough food for the poor that were there. These love feasts disappeared from the church practice because of the abuse of the people that attended them. So something good, something that originally was intended for good, soon became corrupted. People turned it and changed it, and so the early church cut out the practice of them. That's why you don't have too many churches have these time of fellowship teas. And I can remember as a young man growing up, it was a great time to have a fellowship tea. You know, the food that was put on the tables, and everybody just, I won't say went berserk, but the kids, we thought it was wonderful. You know, the stuff that we never had at home, but it was on the table. And, you know, if someone put KFC on that table, it was marked out. But you see, it lost the intention, what it was there for, what purpose it was supposed to be. And so now it has disappeared. So it doesn't take long to work out how feasts, if you like, went belly up. These secret agents sabotaged the purpose of the feasts, turned them into something that you could use and influence others, while at the same time they're white-anting the church from within. But one thing I have to admire is these people's audacity. You see, they came in and took over the love feasts and made them their own vehicle to promote chaos, pleasure and disorder amongst the church brethren. In other words, the love feast became their prey. That was where you got to people you could influence and power over them with your ideologies and thoughts. And they thought it was wonderful. They infiltrated the church so well that genuine Christians had no awareness of who they were or what their intentions were, because they concealed themselves and they were readily accepted into these feasts. Now, the Greek word used to describe is taken from the classical Greek, is the word spalades. And it's an interesting word. It's used to describe reefs of rock close to the shore, hidden just under the surface of the water, laying in wait to catch a ship unawares and rip out its bottom, totally devastating and destroying it. That is the idea of the trap that is laid by these terrorists. And this was the image presented. These secret agents were hidden. They would lie in wait to catch vulnerable Christians when it was too late for them to escape. That was their ploy. Now understand that these meals were designed to help Christians struggling with their faith. They were used to encourage them, inspire them in their walk with the Lord, to grow and develop their understanding of their faith and be able to help them share that faith with other people. You see, what would happen is they would have the Lord's table like we've just happened first, and they would be exposed to the teaching of God's word. They would worship as a congregation. This then was followed by this time of fellowship, a fellowship tea, a love feast as they called it. And this is where these agents of change would seek to infiltrate and influence those presented by undermining the truth, undermining their faith. We know from Scripture that Paul had much to say to the Corinthian church regarding this issue and the impact that it had upon those people. There was corruption issues, divisions, cliques of all kinds. And the love feast got a reputation as being a drunken orgy in Corinth, a place where anything goes was the order of the day. Can you imagine the reputation of a church that had that? Hey, you want a good time? You really want to meet people and just let it go? Anything goes? Well, that church there at Community, you just go to one of their fellowship teams. I tell you, you'll never, ever regret it. Can you imagine the reputation of a church? This is what it was known for in Corinth. Now understand, these agents of fear, or these agents had no fear of exposure. And the Greek word used here is aphobos. They found the conditions very favourable. They had no qualms about what they were doing. They were devoid of any conviction. Their conscience was dead to the damage they were causing to people. In other words, they felt absolutely nothing for the people they deceived. This is one of the reasons why the love feast disappeared from the practice of the early church. Now our text says they cared about themselves. In other words, there was only one priority: look after number one. It was getting the mission they were assigned to do done with minimal fuss, but with maximum damage, so that work that was happening would never recover. The Greek uses a word, poimano, which means to shepherd. And this was the purpose of having these love feasts, where people could sit around and discuss and talk to one another. In other words, it was like a shepherd or a mentoring process where people could gather together who wanted to know more about the Christian faith, who wanted to be counselled in problems that they were having, and they needed some comfort. It was there. People would give it to them, and they got instruction. And this is what was supposed to happen, the idea of shepherding, mentoring other Christians so they could grow in their faith. This was the idea. Yet these shepherds, no. These agents were right into the love feast. They were touching, influencing, and corrupting everything and everyone that they could. They didn't care about people. They took every advantage they could to make sure they got what they wanted, without accepting any responsibility for their actions. They lived for the moment. They took whatever they wanted as long as it satisfied their appetites and mission. Everyone to them was fair game. Every tactic was used to accomplish their objectives: lying, deception, sowing doubts, causing as much confusion as possible, while they slipped away unaffected by what was happening. This is the idea, where they lay just under the surface, hiding their real intents until a ship came and ripped the bottom out of it. This is what Jude is saying. Beware, church. You are people that are like hidden reefs. They're just below the surface. They don't reveal their intentions. They have one purpose: to destroy you, to destroy your testimony, to destroy the church. Beware before it's too late. And unfortunately, that's what's happening in a lot of our churches throughout the world today. They have these people at work promoting their own agendas. They're not preaching the word, but they're preaching philosophies that tickle the ears of all the hearers and make them feel the good about themselves. But they're not promoting growth. They're being ripped off. Now that's enough on its own, but Jude has more to say. Clouds without water, full of promise. They are clouds without rain, blown along by the wind. And as I looked at that, I thought, isn't this Darwin? Think of how many times clouds come up and you think, we're going to get some rain. And what happens? Well, we haven't got a cyclone, Karen, but what happens? The wind comes and blows them away. They have so much promise. You hear the thunder. Yesterday afternoon, thunder. I thought, is it possible? No, we're still waiting. But what's happened is clouds without water. The wind blows them away. They promise a lot, but deliver very little. That's the message. And this is what these secret agents of change and chaos promise so much. But in the end, it amounts to nothing. They really have nothing to give. They cannot provide satisfaction with any of the promises that they make. Proverbs 25:14 says, people who brag about gifts they never give are like clouds and wind that give no rain. So what does that actually mean? It means they promote themselves as being God's representatives. They promise God's blessings upon people. They promote spiritual change and refreshment. But really, all they promise is a lot of hot air. Because they cannot make good on their promises. They fail to deliver on what they say they can do. You heard the expression? My mum used to say this all the time. Empty vessels make the most noise. What does that actually mean? Have you worked it out? Mums do, very quickly. People with not much make the most noise and they get the most attention. These people have nothing to give because they're not genuine. They're not plugged in to the real source of life itself. They rely on the winds of change. They rely on their master Satan to deliver and provide what they need. And they come away empty-handed because he isn't the source. He cannot provide the blessings and refreshment of spiritual blessings because they do not belong to him to start with. It begs the question, as I thought about this, how many religions are there in the world today? Do you know how many there are? Not billions. But did you know 80% of the world's population follows some form of religion? 80%. No one knows just how many religions there are, but it's estimated somewhere between 4 to 10,000 or more. Now, religions are designated by their followers. The most prevalent are East Asian religions, Chinese religions, Japanese religions, Korean religions, African religions, American religions, and many others. Now, I'm not an expert, but experts in religions and researchers tend to break it down into 6 religions of the world, meaning these groups have the most followers. Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. So that's how they characterize. But it's interesting, to have a religion, you only need 2 people. Isn't that wonderful? I could go out today and start my own religion. I don't know what I call it, but it doesn't matter. If I've got a follower, it's a religion. Now, in broad terms, The role of religion is to help people understand the purpose for their existence in the world. It's supposed to answer questions about the origins of life. It's supposed to explain the afterlife and the spiritual realm. It's supposed to define the nature of deity. It clarifies the existence of God and who He is. It's supposed to connect people with God and with each other. That's what religion is supposed to do. But with so many religions to choose from, it shows us just how successful these secret agents have been in undermining the truth about having a personal relationship with God and His truth as presented in the Bible. That's why we've got so many different religions. People are confused. Which is right? Which is true? Who do I follow? Who's right? Which Bible do I follow? Which person do I follow? You see, these people promise blessings. They promise good things. They promise peace, love and hope in the life to come. But you know what? They're like clouds that promise rain is coming. And they're driven away because there's nothing there. And so we need to be careful about the promises that are made by these people. And then he goes on to use another metaphor, if you like. Dead trees, no fruit. Autumn trees without fruit and uprooted, twice dead. It's quite a statement, really. The point being made here is, why have trees that do not produce fruit? In other words, why do you have a tree? If it doesn't produce fruit, what do you do with it? What good is it? Do you just look at it and say, oh, poor tree? But it's not producing anything. Well, you see, unlike the Northern Territory, we have only 2 seasons, wet and dry. I like that, wet and dry. But if you lived in our eastern states, what are you going to put up with? And what can you get in one day? And spring. You can get 4 seasons in one day. I've experienced it in Sydney. You can certainly get it in Melbourne. But they experience the 4 seasons. Now, the last time for harvest for fruit is in autumn, just before winter. It's the last chance you must get the fruit in before winter comes. Otherwise, there's nothing to harvest. So here you are, it's autumn. You're waiting for the fruit so that you can harvest the crops, and there's nothing. You've waited all this time, all through the summer months. Here it is, nothing comes. The tree is dry, it's barren, it produces nothing. It's dead. It's only good for pulling up and burning because it doesn't produce fruit. Now what it says is these people have been planted amongst God people like trees. They don't have spiritual life, so as a result they cannot produce spiritual fruit. They have nothing and they're good for nothing. And our text says they're doubly dead. They are dead at the root. In other words, they have no life. They are dead again because they cannot provide fruit because they are dead and have no life in them. So if you're dead, you haven't got life, where is the fruit going to come from? They have no connection to the soil, no nutrients, and the supply of water. They cannot produce fruit from nothing. Only good that they can and are useful for is for firewood. Pull them up and burn them. Matthew 15:13, Jesus answered and said, "Every plant that my Father in heaven has not planted himself will be pulled up by the roots." What Jesus is saying here is these false prophets and teachers, they cannot produce new life. They cannot produce Christians. They cannot build them up. They cannot equip them They cannot help them to stand on the truth and be fruitful because they have no life. They've never experienced these things themselves. And so what he says is they're like dead trees, produce no fruit. Pull them up. This is another one. Waves of the sea. It's what I call bubble and froth. They're wild waves of the sea foaming up their shame. Now, to add further insult to injury, Jude is saying they are nothing more than bubble and froth. They have no substance. In other words, they have nothing positive to offer anyone but themselves. Now, it's interesting when we have rough weather, so to speak, or even a cyclone. You go down to the Nycliffe foreshore, and it's lovely to see those waves come crashing in, and you're standing on the footpath, and you get clobbered by them. But you see the sea churning. It's agitating. It's really active. It's not passive, but it's active. And when you see, after the turbulence is gone, what do you have? You have a lot of rubbish that's been blown up onto the sands of the shore. There needs to be a big clean-up afterwards. It's a lot of bubble and froth. That's what you see. There's muck and debris everywhere, indicating the damage has come from within. It's been agitated. It's been stirred up. There's nothing useful that can be salvaged. It produces rubbish and confusion. This is what they're good at. They agitate circumstances. They agitate people and places. They're all talk, and whatever action they take is useless and benefits no one. So when you examine their work, all you see is dead wood, seaweed, scum that leaves it's left behind, death and destruction, where everything has been disturbed and churned up and spat out. This, says Jude, is the nature of their work. They come in like waves of the sea, one after another, all show, no go. Instead of producing something worthwhile, all that they do is something like bubble and froth, hardly worth the effort. The product of their efforts is false teaching based on lies and not truth, deception, and they attempt to get what they want at other people's expense. They are charming and eloquent in their presentations, but they do the opposite of what they say. They are prepared to do whatever it takes to get what they want and be successful in their missions. They appeal to base desires of men and women, seek to feed their physical and sexual appetites through logic and reasoning. They want the freedom to express their own opinions without being held accountable for what they present. They imagine a society where there's freedom to be what you want and do what you want without fear of judgment or accountability. They imagine and believe that somehow all men will become gods when they die. Such is the nature and propositions of these people. Now, once upon a time, I would have laughed at that, but not anymore. Because very clearly over the years, human beings have adopted that attitude that we want total freedom. We want to be free to do our own things and be accountable to nobody. Now, the only ones we're accountable to are ourselves. Now, what does that mean? It means I have taken the place of God. I determine what I do, how I do it, and whether it's right or wrong. No one tells me what to do. Can you see how that's infiltrated our society in all levels? People don't like to be told what to do. They don't like to be told how to live. Why? Because we've become gods and trust our own authority. Now, the last one, wandering stars, no direction. Wandering stars for whom blackest darkness has been reserved forever. Now, it's interesting that these people are like wandering stars. Now, is that statement correct? They're like wandering stars. Now, I'm not a scientist, but is that statement correct? All right. There's a difference. Because Stars do not wander from their fixed position. Stars do not wander from their fixed position. Stars are bodies in heaven. They operate in a fixed orbit. Stars take their position and shine every night. Stars do not decide where they're going and what they will do. Their purpose is to shine where they are, and that is in a fixed position as designated by their Creator, who just happens to be God. He determines where they're going to shine and where they'll be. Now, what's Jude's point here? He's referring, as Karen said, to shooting stars. Now, what are shooting stars? They're what I call flash-in-the-pan appearances. They're here and they're gone. You see them, and they're gone. You never see them again. Flashy. They flash across the sky. They look brilliant for a moment. They're gone into the darkness and never seen again. Well, I'm not getting into that. What I'm saying is, they appear and they're gone. They have a short life expectancy before they disappear. And when they do appear, they're flashy, they're brilliant. When they come on the scene first, they have no direction. They're not fixed in their orbit. They're very erratic wherever they appear. People who watch them are taken in by them with their oohs and ahs, and then they're gone forever. The blackness or darkness is their eternal destiny that has been reserved for them. We know as eternal fire from the Scriptures. So these graphic descriptions identify the characteristics of these secret agents, as I call them, who are hypocrites, who are big on promises and dreams, but fall short on the deliveries that they promise. Spiritually speaking, they're as dead as a dodo. Now, if you've got a dodo, please apologise. But they're as dead as a dodo. All talk, no action. They're bubble and froth. All they produce is heartache and debris wherever they go. They're charismatic, they're flashy when they first appear with God's people, and they're gone just as quickly when things don't go their way. They disappear, never to be seen again. They do not bring productive benefits to anyone who genuinely follows the Lord and abides by the truth of God's word. In other words, they blow themselves up and all those who choose to follow them. They leave a trail of destruction and misery based on unfulfilled promises. Their end is in eternal punishment, which has been reserved for them and all who follow them. This is what Jude has been warning us about, and we need to be careful. It's a big warning. This whole chapter is on these spiritual terrorists, these secret agents who are white-anting the church from within. They're very good at what they do. They have a master strategist who is very good and understands human nature better than we do. And what Jude's message is for us is be aware and be on guard. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And we'll see some more next week as we continue looking at the book of Jude, and particularly the book of Enoch. Some people have asked me about the book of Enoch. Yes, it's real. It's there. Why it isn't in the Scriptures, I'll tell you next week. But I'll not tell you now. But it can be got online. You can download it as a PDF, and you can read the book of Enoch for yourself. But I'll mention that